Good morning, everybody. Happy Friday to you. Today is the recap show, which is exactly like it sounds. We're going to be going over all the best parts of all the best shows from this week, and I think it was a pretty good week on the show. So stick around, and we'll go over all those for you. All right, good morning. Sorry, I guess we're back. Trying a different area out here today. Doesn't matter. I woke up this morning, all my camera angles were off, so I had to switch around anyway. There'll be no overlays over here today. Good morning, John. Good morning, Hector. Casey, thanks for stopping by. As you can see, I'm more casual on a Friday today. Since you guys are joining in, let me know if the volume is okay because I'm using a different microphone as well. Trying all this new stuff out. I think you probably all saw last week we got the basement all finished up here. Still got to do some wall stuff. It's kind of boring behind me, but we're working on it. And I don't even know. Let me check something here real quick. Yeah, there's no question of the day today. So just wave in the comments for the question of the day. Let me know how you're doing out there. Let me know how your Friday went. How your week went, how your Friday's going, and I'll get ready to the recap here. So on Monday, for the 14 Secrets of High Performance Chiropractors, we talked about rely on the unseen forces. And that to me is just one of those, being a very logical person, of all the 14, it's the one that's the hardest for me to promote, I guess, because it's so foreign to me, but I also know how much it works. It always reminds me of, I just realized the significance here of sitting in a red chair, because it always reminds me of the movie The Secret, which was what, 15, 17 years ago that came out? Um, and everybody just sat and thought about what they wanted in life and expected it to show up. Because I say the red chair because if you remember, there's a one scene where the guy sat in a red chair and put on driving gloves and pretended to drive a Lamborghini or a Ferrari or something like that. And the point was that it was now going to show up in his life because he thought about it. Thinking about it, having that clear vision in your head of what you want is, I was going to say half the battle, but I don't think it's half. It's less than half. It's a starting point. The second part of relying on unseen forces, and by far the most important to me, is taking action on that, moving towards that goal, and knowing that that goal, again, then moves back towards you through the unseen forces. But if you don't take action and you don't move, I don't think you're ever going to get that thing. Maybe that's a personal opinion. Maybe I disagree with Bob Proctor and the rest of them in that sense. I do think that visualization, that mental picture is very, very important. It's just not as important as the taking of action, of having the faith. And if you remember the last few secrets that we've gone over, it's the ability to have faith, suspend disbelief, and take action towards your goal. Those are the secrets of high performance chiropractic. I think those are the secrets of getting those things that you want out of the movie The Secret, is not just sitting here and visualizing, but then also taking action and having faith that you can attain those things. And also knowing that not only are those things attainable, they're probably more within your reach than you think, especially if you rely on those unseen forces, take action, and realize that those unseen forces are then going to bring those things to you. So, again, tough for me to promote, but I know I take advantage of it in my own life, and I'm have been very trying to get my stuff set up here. Anyways, have benefited from them myself, and I know you will as well. Second, Tuesday, we talked about habit, gravity, and escape velocity, which to me was more of a setup for some of the things we're going to be working on to create new habits. Habit gravity is just explaining that when we try to start a new habit, there's forces pushing against us. There's resistance, just like a rocket ship would have trying to get outside of the Earth's gravity. And in the first 2 minutes of a rocket ship, it uses 87% of the energy, the fuel, the power that it needs to get to, let's say, the moon, in those first 2 minutes just to get outside of the Earth's pole. So that's the same in habit gravity. We do the same thing in the first week of trying to get out of our old habits. We use a lot of energy. Those first 10 days is what I talk about, is where we're really trying to use a lot of energy. It's a focus. It's a conscious effort to get ourselves to change. And it's uncomfortable, let's be honest. But those first 10 days is when we have to use the most amount of energy. And if we can be strict for those first 10 days of getting a new habit, whether it be working out or different diet or something we're doing at work, whatever it might be, we're going to get some momentum built up. And then in the second 10 days, days 10 to 20, we don't have to use as much energy, but we also have a lot more resistance at that point. That's when our body starts to, our brain starts to think, about our old way. And again, I talked about it with clients that I work with that have great success with some of the coaching stuff that we're working on. And 2 weeks into it, for some reason, even though they're seeing great results, they go back to their old habits. It's just kind of a natural pattern. There's some resistance there. So those days to 10 to 20 are days we have to be careful not to go back to old habits. We don't need as much energy towards a new habit. That's becoming good, but we got to stop. We got to avoid the pull of the old habit. And then days 20 to 30 is where we start getting acclimation. This is where we're starting to learn that the new way is the better way. And we would actually have to make a conscious decision to go back to the old way in order to lose that habit. And that's a pretty good place to be, obviously. So just think about that as we're changing habits. I also made mention that we can only really work on one habit at a time. Too many of us try to. One of the reasons I think New Year's resolutions don't work is people are trying to do too many things at one time. They're trying to change their life all at once. And I would much rather see people spend 30 days on one habit. Once that habit is in place, then spend 30 days on another habit. And we're better off doing that throughout the year, making smaller changes, but making them permanent by taking advantage of this escape velocity, getting momentum on that one, making sure that one's set in place before we move on to the next one. So then on Wednesday, we talked about perfect case acceptance, as we always do, and still getting great feedback about that. A lot of people are putting that to action even now when there's less volume in the practices, or less new patients at least. And I've been getting some emails, some messages saying that they're getting good results just from using the concepts. So this week on perfect case acceptance, we talked about some of the myths out there. And the problem with some of the myths, for instance, if you love your patients, you'll push them. You'll push them to accept the case that you want them to accept because it's what's best for them, right? The other one was that there's some sort of magic word theory, that the practices that you see that are the busiest have some magic words or some script that they use. And I get calls constantly, people asking me for a script that they can use to completely convince patients that their way is the right way, and to move them along that continuum that I talk about all the way to a perfect health consciousness. That's not going to happen. That's a myth. So there's no perfect words. There's no perfect script. We don't have to push patients. What was the other one? Some of the other ones we talked about. I'm forgetting my own myths. Get live, and it's tough. I see Wendy, Brian, Kirk join me. Just put a wave in the comments. Tell me hi. Let me know you're there. John, Hector, Casey, we already said hi to you. Just like I said, put a wave in there. Keep me company here on a Friday. That you have to overcome objections. And again, I made the point that you can't overcome objections. Once they're in place, they're in place. And what you need to do is go back in your system, find out what those objections are going to be, and deal with those in your day one, day two, so that we don't ever have the objections. Deal with them before they become an objection. That's the only way we do that there. So again, the point I was making is that the only way good morning, Dr. Sean, the only way you can, I'm saying the problem with some of these myths is that they work. So you've been told this at a seminar from a coach that you trust, and you try it and it works. And I say it works in the sense that it gets you that patient in front of you nodding your head and smiling and accepting your case, but they feel pressured. They feel sold to. And yes, they accepted it, but they don't show up for their appointments, or they don't pay for their appointments, and they certainly don't refer. And what we're trying to talk about in perfect case acceptance is them accepting their case, showing up for all the visits, paying for all the visits, referring all their friends and family, dragging them in the office that they do the same thing. And that's not what you're going to get from the magic word theory and overcoming objections. You're going to get that from building a relationship and actually listening to a patient to a point where they don't just nod their head and smile and start care, but they fully accept your recommendations, and that's what we're looking for. So we dispelled some of those myths, and again, next week we're really kind of getting into some of the I don't want to say meat and potatoes because we've gone over some of the basics. But next week we're going to talk about the philosophy the overriding philosophy of perfect case acceptance. So I'm looking forward to that one. Then on Thursday, we deal with referral mastery. And yesterday, we talked about hyperconvenience, which is my favorite part of the 6 C's, the 6 referral essence components. Cost, convenience, control, comfort, compassion, and competence are the 6 C's. And convenience and hyperconvenience are by far my favorites. I mentioned that convenience is a patient term. Convenience is what patients are looking for. If you give them normal convenience, you don't make them wait. You don't make them wait to get on a schedule. You don't make them wait, 20 minutes when they're in the office. That's normal convenience. That's okay. That'll get you some referrals. But hyperconvenience is what inspires referrals. Hyperconvenience is to the point that they're inspired to refer. They're impressed with your service to such a level that the convenience, the quickness, the attention to detail, the attention to them, something they don't see in the rest of their life. That's hyperconvenience, which will lead to hypercapacity, other way around. If you want to create hyperconvenience, you have to provide hypercapacity, which means you need to be able to see people just regular drop-ins. You need to be at a point where you can always handle one more. You need to be at a point where we're not making people wait, and they're very, very happy with the service. I often tell a story here where I was, when we built my final office, my main office that moved into a 5,600 square foot facility, it was designed in the strip mall, I guess it was a strip mall, to be a bank. That's what they were trying to get into this end cap. I ended up getting 3 of those bays, including that end cap, and they wanted a bank there. So the drawing had the overhang for the drive-through tellers. And for quite a while, for a good month, we were designing the office to keep that overhang with the drive-through teller, but it was my parking spaces for what I considered my hyper-convenient office. So we had 2 entrances. We had the normal entrance with the big sign and all that, and then we had this bank teller entrance, which just was like a small cordoned off room for what we consider our wellness patients that wanted that hyper-convenience. So they would pull up to the drive-through teller, walk through the door, a bell would ring, and somebody, whoever was on hyper-convenient call at that time, would drop whatever they were doing, come in, adjust that person, and get them out. So they could have left their car running, ran in, got adjusted, and left. And we would have had space for 9 people in those 3 teller lanes, 3 apiece. So they'll come in, and again, somebody was always there for that hyper-convenient visit. It never happened. The landlord actually wouldn't allow it because we weren't a bank. He didn't want to build all that stuff out for us, but it was a great idea in my mind, I thought, to provide that hyper-convenience. So people would still come in through the normal visits, and we're going to talk more about it next week as the drop-in visit. And I always say that, when people start their care, they should be in a regular visit. But at some point, a couple weeks in, when it starts to become less convenient for them, we want to provide hyper-convenience and just tell patients, hey, you can drop in anytime you want to. And that's what I was trying to create with that. So that's an example of hyper-convenience. Again, the next 2 weeks, we're going to be talking about some of the ways that we can provide hyper-convenience for people. This time I was just trying to define it and realize that, again, in order to provide hyper-convenience, you have to provide hyper-capacity. That might cost you some money. For me, it would have cost money to build that overhang. Sometimes you have to hire more staff. I made the big point that you have to do it during your busiest times of the day. That's when practices grow. You can't fill your slow times a day with people that work. They might not be working right now, but you can't fill those slow times a day if you sit there and like, oh, I got so much more room left. That's not the point. You got to find your busiest time of the day and find a way through more staff, space, or equipment to provide hypercapacity, which then provides hypercapacity convenience even at the busiest times of the day. That's the key to practice growth. You can find 20% more volume right there during that busiest time of the day if you look for it. So that was this week. I hope you all enjoyed it. John or Sean, I see you saying something, but the screen's too far away from me. I can't read it right now. I'll check that out a little bit. Dennis, thanks for joining us late here. Next week, we're going to continue on with these sessions. Again, Monday, high performance secrets. Tuesday is going to be some motivation productivity. Wednesday, perfect case acceptance. And Thursday, referral mastery. Make sure you stop by for all those shows next week. And I will talk to you then. Have a great weekend.